Wow guys, we have some great news coming from the front lines from Pokrovsk Direction. There you can see Ukrainian counterattack vectors, and Russians have been already cut fully. Between the villages of Shakhove and Novoshakhove, supply lines do not exist any longer. Well, even before, Ukraine cut the Russian supplies here with the help of the drones, but now Ukrainian soldiers physically met each other in this spot. Yeah, you might see that front lines are boiling, so this is the gray area still, so some of the Russians could be even here, but finally Ukrainian presence is also there. So for Russians, it is absolutely not possible to supply their army group over here and also in Kucherev Yar, where, by the way, we have the confirmation of the cleared area from the Russian troops. Here there could be some of the presence of Russians, and Russians still keep control over the part of the Kucherev Yar, or it's better to say the forest spot, and they are being supplied there with the help of the drones only. Well, I hope that Ukraine will get rid of this encirclement very soon and concentrate efforts on the next piece of pie. The same confirmation we have from the deep state military map source, so it was yesterday, it is today. Ukraine gained some of the ground, confirmed, Novoshakhove totally liberated, and here Russian supplies were absolutely cut. So after all, I was correct with my idea that Syrskyi went to Pokrovsk Direction. He met with Ukrainian commanders there, including the chief of Ukrainian drone army Magyar, that they are planning something big, and this big is already happening. One more stage of Ukrainian counterattack in Pokrovsk Dobropilya. For now, Russians are unable to withstand Ukrainian strikes, and they are losing the territory here little by little. So this part is absolutely successful for Ukraine. Russia already lost here almost 2,000 of the troops, and they continue to lose those even now. And I don't see the way for them actually to save their forces in Kucherev Yar and in this encirclement. Also, I would say between Sukhetsk, Zatushek, Fedorivka, Boykivka and Razine, there is also the risk for Russian forces to be cut completely. As we know, supplies here are almost impossible for Russians to conduct. So to save this disastrous situation for Russia, there is only one solution possible for the Russian army commanders, is to gather the forces they are accumulating not far away from Donetsk and start one more huge jump on Ukrainian positions, also puring the forces from this side. But still they hesitate for now, at least, because it is very risky. It might bring them even more losses. But Zelensky says that Russians are getting ready even for that operation, which could be started this fall. But here Russians have their attack vector towards Novopavlovka, Toretsky and Sofiivka. I've told about it a couple of days ago that definitely they try to get more ground, and actually they occupied Poltavka here, but for now we see that they do not pour lots of the forces here in this attack vector, so I see it as an attempt from Russian army to find the weak spots in Ukrainian defense. It looks like the planning before big strike, which I'm sure will happen, but whether it's gonna happen this month, well, we'll see. The idea for Russians here is to cut Ukrainian supplies to Sofiivka and to this entire region, and also jam Ukrainian army in Shakhove, but Russians themselves, they have a desperate situation, this spot between Shakhove and Novoshakhove, so I see that they will not be able to attack from the south or from the west. Yeah, it's not possible, they don't have enough forces here. That's why even if Russians advance to, for example, Sofiivka and cut this road, well, it doesn't mean the encirclement of Ukrainian army, because actually towards west there are just minor groups of the Russian soldiers which are now being trapped. But in general, I think Ukraine will also counterattack Russian forces in Poltavka, causing them to stop. And yeah, for the last couple of days, they haven't propelled here, so it was not the major operation of Russians against some of the small sabotage groups, but still sometimes they also may possess threat for Ukrainian armed forces. So the next step for Ukraine would be probably to cut those enclaves that Russian army created with the help of the drones, artillery, even aviation. Ukraine will kaput them, or they would force Russians to surrender. But I saw multiple of the videos how Russians do not want to surrender, even if they are encircled by Ukrainian forces. Yeah, there were multiple of the images published by our warriors online on YouTube, including, yeah, with some other restrictions, but you can watch those videos of how our troops go to the villages, to the buildings, and Russians are hiding underground, and they are throwing grenades from their cover. And yeah, they receive also some of the grenades to their cover, and they are being kaputed. They They simply don't want to surrender in many of the occasions. I don't know how they were brainwashed for that. Maybe Russian commanders tell them that Ukraine tortures them in the Ukrainian prisons, but there are multiple of the exchanges showing that Russian soldiers are actually in a good shape. If they surrender, they have food, accommodation, medical care, which is more or less like in a standard prison, maybe sometimes even better. Because Ukraine even converted some of the sanatoriums for those purposes to accommodate Russian prisoners, because there are not enough prisons in Ukraine for all of the Russian soldiers. Alright, and now let's go to the interactive map itself. Here Ukraine shells Russian occupiers. Yeah, most of the strikes are now being performed with the help of the drones. Russians are trying to hide in the villages, in the bushes, but thermal camera may find them quite well. So here Russians who were unlucky and were trapped in a Kucherev yard, they received some of the drone drop support from Ukrainian armed forces. This kind of support helps them to relieve the pain forever. And for sure, those Russians, they have to surrender. There is no way surrender or be flatlined by the drones, because even if they go to their own positions in the south, well, here this area is also encircled. Russians are trapped and there are less space to hide, I would say. There are just fields, tree lines, and the cover, well, it's hard to get the cover here. So actually the situation for Russians in Kucherev Yar, it could be even better. Ruined buildings with basements. Ukraine still hesitates to send infantry forces here, but it is getting closer to the place. And here's the gray area where Ukrainian army was spotted before. But here Ukrainian army is doing its job very slowly, because it has the time, if we speak about this direction, nowhere to rush, because Russians have nowhere to run. Plus, Ukrainian drones continue to operate in this possible Russian enclave, and yes, supplies were mainly cut for Russians here. Let's check out some of the videos or photos with geolocation. Well, here I see some sort of the road, and what was there? Yeah, some of the Russian infantry and a vehicle. Vehicle was kaputted there well before. And there are multiple of the drone strikes also recorded. By the way, not all of the videos are being published to internet, so there are lots of the other things happening. And what is interesting that for the last few days I see the reduction in the Russian activity in Pokrovsk direction. Mostly Ukrainian army uses drones, artillery, and even Ukrainian infantry was spotted at the very border of Kryvyi River. It's very interesting why Russia lowered its activity in Konstantinovka and Torres direction, because the last week they managed to expand this gray zone closer to Konstantinovka. Well, Russians continue to use their drones and aviation strikes, but here in Torres they're quite calm. Well, if you may use the term of calm, and usually this calmness is before the thunderstorm. And I think that soon Russians might definitely start their massive offensive maneuver in Pokrovsk direction and Konstantinovka, because those are two main settlements which are located in those kind of the pockets, yeah? And Russians crucially need to occupy those to propel further to, for example, Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. They cannot leave Konstantinovka and Pokrovsk behind. Guess we're gonna return to the front lines review. Just want to announce the news coming from Magyar. He announced the massive reform in several of the regiments and expansion. I mean, they will hire more of the personnel and obtain more of the gear. For now, Magyar says that just 2% of Ukrainian army is the drone army, if we speak about people involved as well as resources. His goal is to make it at least 5%, so Ukrainian drone army will be the most capable probably in the world, expanding by more than 2 times, and I guess Ukraine in this case will be capable to cut Russian assaults completely. I mean, even small territorial grounds for Russia would be impossible to achieve in this case. If the goal is achieved, the goal is to build the entire death zone all across the front lines. And for this, drones are the best tool, so Magyar does his job perfectly. Alright, and here's the Ukrainian aviation in action in the village of Uspenivka. This is Pokrovsk direction. Again, gliding aviation bomb. Thankfully, Ukraine still has lots of them, made in France and United States of America. Our Western partners, thank you. But Russia also masters the gliding bomb technology, and they have big bombs, huge bombs, up to FAB 3000, I guess. So our allies also need to increase the size and came out with new modules for those big bombs. And now let's go to the front lines because there is the direction where actually Russians take the ground. It is happening in Dnipropetrovsk region. Over here they advance towards Verbova village and put their flags out there. This video comes from Russian channels. You can see a Russian flag there and geolocated village of Verbova. For now it's in a gray zone and Ukraine put some of the artillery fire, I guess, over there. Or maybe those are the drone drops. I wonder they could put those Russian soldiers who came there with flags. Yeah, also the same village of Verbova. If we check out the same area from the deep state military map source, you can see that every day, so I'm clicking every day update, and you see how Russia moves there. So the advancement is kind of big. Let's check out for 1 month. Yeah, September the 1st it was. Yeah, you see, quite substantial movement of the Russian army here. I would even call it a breakthrough, and the main aim for Russians here is Pokrovsk. Yeah, it's the similar name as Pokrovsk, just at the end. But as Pokrovsk in Donetsk Oblast, here Pokrovsk in Dnipropetrovsk region is also quite important. It is a crossroad and connection. Russia tries to cut supplies for Ukrainian army, but the Ukrainian army, according to the recent information, is sending more reinforcements to stop Russians somewhere in Verbova. Well, at least we have this data coming from one of the OSIN analytics. 110th Mechanized Brigade of Ukrainian Army is going to fight in this direction. They have lots of the tanks, BMPs and infantry. The main task is to stop Russian advancement towards Pokrovsk. Yeah, for now Russians are successful here, but they are not reaching the main Ukrainian defense lines. The main line goes before Pokrovsk and to the south and then here, somehow like that. I did not specify locations, I just saw some of the images from it. So here is the area of responsibility of 110th Brigade. It's already been almost fully deployed there, and the units of this brigade are already in operation near Olhivska village, so it's towards the south, not in Verbova itself, but the southern area they decided to send it. Okay, we'll see with the future update of what is going on in this direction. There is the hope for Ukraine to stop this Russian attack, the major one, yeah? Oh, in Verbova 110th Brigade operates as well, so the image that I showed you with some of the households with Russian army being kaputted, that's 110th Brigade in operation. Interesting. The front for this brigade is quite long, so they dispersed their forces, unfortunately, but Ukraine is a lack of the resources. You might remember that the day before yesterday I've told you about the Russian helicopter which was kaputted by Ukrainian drone intercepted mid-air. Well, we have a detailed location of where it happened. It happened in Nadiivka village. Helicopter went down and burned completely, but we have some extra information provided to us by some of the Russian propagandists. Yesterday they got some of the podcast on Russian Sputnik radio. It's also a Russian propaganda where one of the Russian military bloggers stated that all except 2 people perished in that crash. Only navigator and flight engineer were capable to evacuate from the helicopter. On board of the helicopter there were some of the paratroopers. They do not specify the number of those. Paratroop division VDV, and all of them were flatlined together with the captain of this helicopter who was 27 years old, as they say. So he landed the helicopter but was not able to leave the cockpit. He was blocked in his place and burned down together with helicopter. Oh my god, is it a proper way to wear the headphones? Russian podcasters. By the way, the mics are great. And about the Kupiansk direction, Kharkiv Oblast, Russians stopped moving for the several days. Moreover, they tried to bring some of the artillery systems and all of them were kaboomed by Ukrainian drones. I think it's a very stupid idea to bring artillery that close. And even I know that Ukraine has significant amount of the defense forces near Sinkivka. So of course Ukraine fired to all of those systems and they've been cancelled. Speaking about the Kupiansk city, Russians control the northern side of it and Ukraine controls the central part and the rest part. And now Russians are trying to get to this road to cut supplies for Ukraine in Kupiansk. Let's check out Ukrainian drone operations. D-30 Garmata, it means artillery, was kaputted. And also tank. Yeah, tank was spotted over there and later on was kaputted. Awesome, so not just artillery. 2 artillery cannons and 1 T-72 tank. Geolocated and confirmed at this place. Awesome. As for the rest of the front lines, no significant changes.
And then this very big YouTuber called Dennis. He gave me a shout out and things got out of control.
Yeah, sorry Emanea, but I do it once again. Guys, she returned back to YouTube. I did the shout out to her channel a long time ago, and finally she returned back on YouTube. There were some of the troubles with her channel, and why I quit YouTube explains it perfectly. So I recommend you to check out the video description. I will put in the first line the link for her channel, I guess exactly for this video, and you'll find it out. Together with Imania, we collect some of the funds for Ukraine. Sometimes then I have streams. We already bought with you a fire truck which was delivered to Zaporizhia, as well as 4 of the vehicles which also were delivered for Ukrainian forces. We do it via my Finnish friends, and Imania, she is from Finland herself. So again, Nordic perspective, that's her channel. Subscribe for it. The link is in the video description just below. I'm very happy that Imania restored her channel, because after all she likes it as she describes. And guys, thank you for your kind support on my Patreon and membership of the channel. Without you, I wouldn't be able to film all of this content on YouTube. And today I filmed this frontline update, but later on in a few hours I'm gonna film one more video telling about the news around Ukraine and not only. And as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.